My name is Justin Wade, and I'm a creative.
Ready, Doctor?
Let's do it.
All right, we are back. This is Creativity is the Cure. I am your host, Malcolm Moore, and today I have my very good friend, Justin Wade. How are you doing today, Justin?
I'm good, Dr. Malcolm. I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
I think 12 years ago we met because both of our kids are going to the same school, and it's Larchmont Charter School System, but we hit it off right away. I think we were doing a fundraiser, and we found out that we were both drummers.
Yep, that's right.
And then we went on to do so many fun things together, mostly double drumming, hanging out, drinking espresso. Am I forgetting anything?
There's a lot of laughter.
A lot of laughter. I know you as a comedian, an actor, a writer, a director, and I would say an entrepreneur. Does that sound right?
It sounds like unemployed, but sure, go ahead.
Let's go way, way back in time. You were originally from Canada, is that correct?
Grew up in downtown Montreal, Westmount, and DG. For anybody who's from Canada or from Montreal would know. I'd be like, oh my God, that's pretty cool. And then I moved to New York. I lived in Harlem, New York during the 70s with my old man for a while.
Wow.
And that was a trip. Yeah, that was when Mayor Koch was in office wearing his purple three-piece suit. I think that's where you guys, I don't know where you got that from. He definitely looked like a Joker when I saw him downtown in Chinatown. I was like, oh my God.
And then for people that don't know, New York City in the 70s was vastly different than what you see today.
Yeah. Yeah. It was exciting. It was dangerous. It was percolating with all kinds of arts and new trends. Breakdancing was just coming out.
Yeah.
Rap was just coming out.
All the punk bands at CBGB's and the Talking Heads and Blondie, Ramones, right?
Harry, the Ramones, yeah.
And one of your favorite types of music, whenever I think of you, I think of ska music. How did you get into that?
Well, that was when I left Harlem and went back to Canada. And then it was interesting because I went from having not so much money, living with my old man, to living in a pretty upper middle class, society in Montreal, Westmount. And I went to a boarding school. And I would say my introduction to ska was through privilege. So, because I think in order to be ska, you have to, especially, if you're dressing up like one of the mods, because we all dress like one of the mods, it came with, you had to have a little bit of coin in your pocket. I mean, you couldn't just get penny loafers, gray slacks, a tie, a parka, and a scoot, and try to be in a gang and say that you're really roughing it out. But
never pictured you as a ruffian.
Yeah, I was a bit of a scallywag, back in the day, back when I was, not crazy. I mean, it was just like in Montreal, everything was like, if you had an issue, you dealt with fists, Yeah. It wasn't with guns and knives or any of these things that kids are doing now or internet. So
it was like a cross between West Side Story and the Beat It video, something like that.
Yes, it was had a bit of a Patty Chayefsky latent something or another. Just it was a soft version of quadrophenia, which was something that Canada was often known for doing. We would take something and then we would just water it down, like. If we had CSI in Canada, it would be called Beachcombers. Okay, it was
like the Mel Brooks scene.
It was CSI, yeah. It was a cop show that took place on tugboats in Vancouver, BC.
So, tell me about one of your favorite ska bands and why.
Well, the one that I that my favorite commercial was obviously the Beat, the English Beat.
Yeah,
I loved them, everything about it, and then right there, right next to them, was the Specials.
yeah.
The Specials, I would say, was actually my number one. But I would say, and those were the commercial ones. But I would say my favorite one were these two girls from Montreal called Double Agent. Yeah, Double Agent, and yeah, they were great, and they would play over at this town hall, whatever, in the core of Westmount. And by the way, like, again, we're talking about privilege, okay, when it comes to ska in this part. It's just because Westmount is known as, it's the equivalent of Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, okay?
Yeah.
So you have all these kids that are just defecting from societal norms, apparently, at least from Friday to Sunday. I mean, we were 13, 14. We're like, screw you, mom, screw you, dad. And it's like, back to school. Can I get a ride? So yeah, Double Agent would perform at this one little town hall in Westmount, and all the kids would go there, and we would just, jump off stage and talk stupid and smoke cigarettes.
And put a safety pin through your nose from time to time.
No, well, yeah, I was never really good at that. I was never, not to get sidetracked, I hated needles. I would make a horrible heroin addict. I cut my finger, had to get a tetanus shot. The entire staff of the Montreal Children's Hospital had to catch me. And I was fast. I was O.J. Simpson fast before he was bad.
Yeah. One thing I've always loved about ska music is that group of people and musicians have always stood up for equality way more than most scenes. The only one I can think of before that would be like Sly Stone. Right.
Well, that was the wonderful thing about ska, is that it was kind of like a crossover for white and black people.
Yeah.
And that was, again, it wasn't that prevalent of a message to the young kids, but they kind of got the idea of it.
I think just by example.
General public.
Yeah. General public. Yeah. Fine Young Cannibals, all that stuff. It just seemed to be matter of fact. They didn't even need to promote it. They were just living it by example, like common sense.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch The Young Ones, the BBC like punk ska show?
No.
Oh, man, you got to check it out. They have all these bands you're talking about there, including like Madness. It was kind of similar setup to Monty Python, a lot of skits and stuff, but a lot of the great bands that you and I like were on there.
Yeah, one step beyond.
Exactly. Let's go back even further in time. What is your first creative memory?
Well, besides playing with my action figures, Luke Skywalker, and cross-pollinating Star Trek with Star Wars.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, well, in Canada, you can get away with these kind of things.
You can even throw Barbie and Super Joe Commander in there.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? Yeah. They were all interchangeable clothing. So, William Shatner never looked better in a skirt. That's a really interesting question. I do know my first creative outlet when I knew that I was good at something, and that's when I did Pirates of Penzance. I played Frederick.
Wow, where was this in high school? Okay.
So I went to a boarding school in like northern part of Quebec in Montebello called Sedberg, and I wasn't because I was a problem child. It's just just for the fans. They're like, yeah, sure, Justin, whatever. No. I was actually a good kid. I was actually a pretty good kid, believe it or not. I played the lead of Gilbert and Sullivan's Pirates of Penzance.
Wow.
And I was asked to play in it, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Okay, I can even go further back. When I lived in Harlem, I used to do fashion shows on roller skates.
Wow, this I didn't know.
So it was like 1977, 78. I would go down to the Roxy. There were various parts of New York where, and this is when roller skating was at its height.
Now, let me go back for everybody. This is when people wore Jordashes and they had like a roach clip with a feather on it and maybe a comb in their back pocket. Does that sound about right?
No, I had an Afro pick. Yeah, I had an Afro pick. Yeah, and Jordache. Okay. I love it how you're setting it up for everybody. Like, okay, folks, this is the wardrobe, this is the setting, and don't forget, it smells like urine.
Yeah, and everybody has feathered hair like Leaf Carrot.
Everyone has feathered hair, yeah. So, hilarious. I would do these fashion shows, and people would be like, hey, that's really good. When you get that you see that look in people's eyes where they're just like, oh, this kid's got something, or he's got talent. That's something that just, it feeds you.
Yeah.
I would say another time where I knew that I was funny. This is the first time I knew that I was funny. I was 15 years old, and my parents gave me an allowance. They used to give me allowance, and they gave me like $10.
A lot of money back then.
No, it really didn't feel like it was, actually. And I complained about it. And I was like, you know what? This is BS, man. Like, what is going on? And I'm walking with my friends, and my friends are listening to me. And I'm going on this tirade. It's like, what am I supposed to do, man? I'm 15 years old. What am I going to do with $10? I mean, do they even know what's going on? Like, what I'm doing? And my friends were just laughing. And I was like, I don't know what you're laughing about. I'm upset. And they just kept on going. And it was right there. And they were howling over. It was like right there and then I knew I had a bit of a gift.
Yeah.
So that's how that strangely came about. And then cut to, Comedy Store years later. So
how about your parents? Are they creative? Were they creative when you were growing up? And in what ways?
Well, my mother was more of a muse than anything. But what she could do is that she could walk into Bonnie. Bonnie could walk into a room and she owned the room.
Yeah.
She just had a way of just walking in and people would be like, wow, who is that?
Yeah.
She is dynamite. And she was so gracious and elegant in her way. She was like 5'2", blonde hair, blue eyes.
Wow.
And just owned it. Spoke both French and English, a little bit of Spanish, and dabbled with Italian, And then my father, Alfie, he was a renowned jazz musician throughout Montreal.
What instrument?
Piano.
Wow.
So he could, and I would get calls every once in a while from people that are doing documentaries on jazz of Montreal. And they'd be like, "Excuse me, sir, but do you know who Alfie Wade is?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, he's my father. Yes, yes." Can you tell us more about him? I was like, sure. I mean, and if you find anything, you need to tell me something about him because I haven't seen the motherfucker in a while. I have this joke, people are like, yeah, and, my mother's 5'2", blonde hair, blue eyes. My daddy's missing. So.
One of your earliest jokes.
It's been still going on strong for 30 years.
So do you find yourself like doing all these creative things that you do once in a while going, oh man, I get that from my dad or I get that from my mom?
Yeah. When I would walk into an audition room, I enjoy auditioning. Like with Zooms, I'm not crazy about Zooms, but when I walk into a room filled with people or if I walk on stage, I love it. I love that opportunity to just capture everyone's imagination all at one time.
I've seen you do that in public when it is clearly not an audition as well.
Oh my God. On cafes sometimes. I'll just walk into any Starbucks and they'll be like, what can I get you? And I'll look around and be like, can I get and I'm simple with my coffee. I just like a medium, and they'll be like, okay. And they're like, can you give us your name? And I'll be like, Shaka Zulu. Can you say that nice and loud? Because I'm kind of hard of hearing. Some little kid going, Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu. It's like, can't even pronounce it through the braces.
Is that the first? Shaka Zulu. Is that the first and the last name?
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's a hyphen. Can you just hyphen it? Shaka Zulu.
Do you think that creativity can help people suffering with depression and anxiety? And if you do, in what way?
100%. I think first, well, because I do suffer from depression myself, and one of the first things that I have to do is I have to write something down. I just have to write it out.
Yeah.
And then when I do that, I also will play music. Like I'll get behind the drums.
Yeah.
Or I even pick up the bass, and even though I can't play bass very well, like I just learn a song off of YouTube and I'll plunk away. And they give you like the instruction on how to do it and you play the song. And for some reason, it just takes your mind off of whatever you're anxious about.
A little bit of escape.
Yeah, it's a great escape. But what's funny is that if I don't do stand-up or if I'm not performing on stage doing theater or, because sometimes, you're not going to always get the great TV or movie gig.
Right.
I just find a way to just, get up on stage and just perform. And then, that just gives you that adrenaline rush and makes you feel a whole lot better.
Right. The process probably compartmentalizes your feelings.
100%. That and going for a walk sometimes, sometimes I go for a walk and I put my earbuds on pretending I'm talking to someone and I just I let go.
That's a wise thing to do in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah. And you got to do it like, yeah. Or you go to the middle of a park and you just start screaming, no, like you're Kurt Russell and Tombstone. No.
Have you ever solved a personal challenge by using creativity? And when I say that, I mean the improvisational part of your mind.
Solving a problem. I don't know if I can answer that question specifically, but I was a host for the Society of Camera Operators, and it was an award show.
Right.
And it's a very niche market in terms of like what jokes you're going to tell. I mean, you're talking to a bunch of guys that carry 55-pound cameras on their back. Like, what are you going to talk about other than sciatica?
Yeah.
But what I would do through my writing process, my joke writing process, is that I would improvise. I would act it out.
Yeah.
And did that. All my improvisation, actually a good chunk of it, would land in my routine. And what it did is that it freed up whatever it was that I was, the joke that I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
And it made it more playful and less premise at a punchline. One of the things that I tell people when I host this show called Actors Night once a month over at the Broadwater Theater, and one of the first things I tell somebody, and it's a lesson that I took from a great acting coach, Leslie Kahn, is I dare you to fuck up.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it's like you're giving yourself the freedom to not try to fit yourself into a certain peg in order to feel like you've done something, like you're a part of something or that you're worthy of it.
Right.
So I would tell people, like, come up here and do mistakes. People have it in their mind before they get up there that, the one thing is, and this goes across the board with everything in life, is acceptance.
Right.
And being feeling worthy and valued. Those are the things that everybody really needs. And with value, it's just like, am I valuable? Am I contributing enough? Am I worthy? Is it worthy for me to be here?
Right.
Like, what's the point? And when you improvise and you realize that it's not up to them, it's really up to you. And if you can laugh at yourself and have fun with yourself, then you probably you will find it. There's no paint by numbers brochure. It's not like footsteps that lead from the front door to the cash register at McDonald's. It's just like you gotta improvise.
I'm sure I've told you before, my favorite singer's always been Peter Gabriel. So I got the chance to take both of my sons to see him at the Forum. And I also know some guys in the band, so I knew that they were filming the show for like a Blu-ray and streaming, right? And right during one of the biggest songs, Don't Give Up, Peter messed up like two of the lines. And he laughed and he sat down and he goes, oh man, I fucked up. And I was like, that is pretty cool at the Forum to just go, whatever,
Yeah. Even last night, Luka Doncic, who's the basketball star now for the Lakers.
Yeah.
He played back in Dallas, where he started his career when he was 19 years old. And when he came in, they did like a 10-minute presentation of all his highlights, and the crowd just loved him.
Yeah.
They showed him a lot of love. Now, okay, yeah, that's, this is coming from a happy place. But the things that he started to cry, he got overwhelmed. And JJ Redick, the coach of the Lakers, when asked, hey, how did you feel about Luka's reaction and watching his thing? And he's like, I thought it was pretty cool to see him get emotional.
Yeah.
It's good to see that. Just like what you saw, And then the kid went off and had a 40, I'm getting so emotional. No, 40-point plus game.
Yeah.
Letting yourself go, not trying to, fit so much. There's no fitting.
I was listening to, God, this is such a good interview. Mark Maron interviewed Peter Weller yesterday. And I didn't know this, but Peter Weller is apparently a pretty good trumpet player. And his hero was Miles Davis. And he got to know him well. And one of the cool things that came out of the interview is he said that Miles said there is no bad note that you can play. It's the note that you play after that can make it work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see that in acting all the time, right? Or comedy. You got to work the room. You got to respond to what happens and be a good listener.
Yeah. And sometimes, that's the thing is that when you play that note and it's not right.
Or what you had planned.
Or as you planned. That's how you grow, and, they say that, whenever you make mistakes, that's where you learn.
If you're playing music and you make a mistake, do it twice and then it's a riff.
Right. Yeah. And especially with Miles Davis, you know, if you listen to his Evil Live album.
Oh, God. That's a good one.
Like the first one, you're like, did he really come up with that? Like, did he really write that?
So you said something that touches upon an issue that has come up with a lot of my interviews recently. I've recently interviewed a lot of comedians, and most of them told me that there's something about writing a joke down on a piece of paper that helps commit it to your brain. So when you come up with jokes for your stand-up, do you ever write them down first?
I do, but it's just the idea.
Yeah.
Like if I was to read the joke out, like I've done that, and then I've read the joke out to somebody without ever really, I'll be like, oh man, I want to work on this premise. And they're like, oh, okay, right, okay. I was like, sure, okay. But it's let's just to get the idea down so that you know exactly. It's just a blueprint. It's it's no different from like journaling or it's part of your streamline of consciousness, and then you just got to write it down.
Yeah, I think for me, with composing, I get ideas all the time, and thank God I have my iPhone and I use voice memo, and then I can look, a week later and there's 100 little ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I do as well. I do a lot of video.
Right.
When I have my jokes, because along with the video comes attitude and emotion.
Right.
Well, with that, I think, with a joke to really land, I think there always has to be a certain attitude and an emotion that comes along with it.
Yeah. It's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
I think even more important how you say it than what the content is.
Yeah. Yeah. What's his name? It was at the Comedy Store. And, he's one of our favorite comics out there. And he's like, listen here, ladies, listen, this is, it was a showcase for an agency that we were all part of. And he's like, listen here, ladies. Like, we're all dudes, and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever you want to say, man. And he was like, it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. The words don't matter. Read the goddamn telephone book. It's how you say it, okay? We're like, yeah, he's right.
Yeah, that definitely encapsulates the idea. You're a great drummer, and you and I have had so much fun just practicing or playing shows doing double drums. So who's one drummer who inspires you and why?
I got to say, I would say the one drummer that inspires me a lot is Kyle Crane.
I knew you were going to say that because that's who popped in my head. That guy is a astounding drummer, a really funny guy. But a lot of times I see a drummer, I'm like, I'm going to go home and figure that beat out. And then I see Kyle, I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this because it's from another planet. Kyle
Crane, we met at the second stage at the Improv, and he was playing with a trio. It was about 17 years ago. And I was already blown away by how he played and everything. I was just like, wow, this guy really knows. And I went up to him and I was like, hey, I've got this show that I do. Would you like to be a part of it? And you could play alongside the DJ.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Okay. In this funny, weird, quirky way, which is just like, and I don't say, when I say weird, I mean like awesomely weird,
Yeah.
funny, quirky. It's just like,
he's the good kind of eccentric.
Yeah, yeah, like Miles Davis was eccentric, like he had his own way, it's his own style.
Yeah.
And from the time that I met Kyle 17 years ago to today, that guy is throwing in the reps. Like he is like the platinum standard of Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, constantly evolving too.
Constantly evolving, constantly playing. And I would sit there and he would inspire me to go home and work. And everything that he would do, he would play often at the Thirsty Crow. There's a little promotion right there.
Yeah, in fact, I think the way that you introduced me to him is we went to see him play drums for Daniel Lanois.
I think it was at a garage. I think it was during Daniel's birthday party.
That's right. They did it at a motorcycle garage.
Yeah, they did a motorcycle garage. Yeah.
And for people that don't know, Daniel Lanois is one of the best producers that has ever lived. One of his homes is in Silver Lake here, but produced people like Peter Gabriel, U2, huge bands. But also, not only has he done beautiful, singer-songwriter work and albums like that, but his improv is what he does with Kyle. And he just uses these bizarre computer machines and improvs while Kyle plays like a drum and bass beat that you shouldn't even attempt at trying.
Yeah. Did we go to the KTLA? Didn't we go to KTLA?
You mean when we went to, I think it was CBS in Burbank, that show that was broadcast, that one? Because I remember Kyle played with Daniel there.
Yeah. Inside the studio.
That was incredible to see Kyle play live. Just experience of a lifetime.
And yeah, look up his albums, Crane Like the Bird. That's his. That's his.
Great solo work too. Comedy. Who inspires you? Who is one comedian that has made a big impact on you?
Well, it will forever be Richard Pryor. Richard, what he did was something that there weren't a lot of comedians that did what he did. I mean, Bill Cosby was great. Yes, Bill Cosby was a great comedian.
Mm-hmm.
A horrible guy to go on a date with.
But you know what? Despite him being canceled, I think all of us, especially comedians, can agree that he was iconic. He was like no other. He was such a great storyteller. And I'm sure you, like me, we grew up listening to his albums and watching Fat Albert on TV, right?
Yep. I collected all his albums, from before, but even Richard Pryor used to model his stand-up.
Yeah, I've seen the early footage, and I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he would, and then it wasn't until one night, I think it was in Vegas, and it was in front of like D. Martin, a whole bunch of folks, where Richard, he had a meltdown, and he says, "I am not Bill Cosby," and he walked off stage. But the thing is that there was only one exit on the stage, and he walked up the wrong side of the stage, so then he had to walk right back across, and he was like, "Shit, God damn it!" And that's when I think he went up to Berkeley and got in touch with who he was and listened to Marvin Gaye on repeat.
Yeah.
He found himself and he found his own voice, which is what all the comics.
What do you like about his comedy? That he's a good storyteller or impressions? What's your favorite aspect of what he did?
His vulnerability. He was very open about his life, and he had a turbulent childhood, between like, it is like we had a couple things in common, like, his father, wasn't really in the picture. His mother, she had her druthers. His grandmother, she was a madam for a whorehouse, but and he saw things and then he just brought it back and he started telling people what was up. It was almost like with George Carlin. George Carlin almost had that transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, where he was buttoned up and he would tell all the jokes.
Yeah,
and he had the two-piece suit and he talked formally and bop, 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 and then all of a sudden he just said forget it, and he took off, came back with long hair, bell bottoms, and a long beard, and just started telling it how it was, and that's how Richard and just to see anybody to make that transition, and to let go is
the transition to who he really was, right?
Yeah. where you're not playing by the system. You are the system.
Can I ask you this, though? I see a little bit of a correlation between Richard and Andy Kaufman. And when I say that, I mean, he crossed the line of what is comedy, but then what is performance art. And we all know how Andy Kaufman would do stuff like that, like start crying or, act like he didn't know what was going on. But for Richard, you probably know this more than me. I guess there was a time he went to a comedy venue in LA and he came in there acting like God and he started shouting at the crowd, "What did you do with my son?" And it wasn't a night of like jokes. He just did that. And Robin Williams was like, everyone was speechless. He just left the building.
Yeah. That was at the Comedy Store. And I've heard the recordings.
Yeah.
It was at one point I was getting ready to audition for a movie about Richard Pryor.
Right.
And that was the thing about Richard. Richard always, talk about having a God complex. He would tell all these comedians that they were going to play him once he was dead. And he'd go up to like Damon Wayans and Eddie Griffin and all these cats, and he'd be like, "You're going to play me. You're going to play me." And then when he died, nobody, the movie never got off, except for maybe a few people. And one person I know who actually looks like him too was Andy Clemens. But there haven't really been any, and Andy is a wonderful actor, but there aren't any real comedians that have played Richard. And yeah, so he got up on stage and we started talking about like, "What have you done to my son?" And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. You can do that at the Comedy Store. I mean, you can do that at the Improv and stuff like that. But the Comedy Store, people know that this kind of stuff, it would be like interpretive dancing of comedy would happen at any given night, especially way back then when you had like Sam Kinison, Bob Saget, Sandra Bernhard, Roseanne Barr, Louis Anderson, like anything, Gary Shanley, anything could happen. Jim Carrey, anything could happen.
Yeah.
And it still happens every once in a while. You never know. It's never always going to be straight up comedy.
We were talking about this on a different podcast episode. Steve Martin, when he got to the point where he was playing in an arena and he couldn't see people's eyes, he was like, all right, I don't even know if I'm funny anymore because I'm famous and there's so many people here. So he started doing all that crazy stuff like, everybody follow me, we're going to McDonald's, and he bought everybody hamburgers.
Yeah.
What do regular people that are not comedians, what do they not understand about being a comedian? Can you give us an inside view? What's something that people might not know that you have seen behind the stage or looking at the audience? What's your perspective?
I don't know. I mean, everyone's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or
but to be honest, it's hard to get your foot in the door, right? You've been doing it for a long time, but for someone to break into it and just start out, there's those venues where you have to bring a certain amount of people so they buy drinks so you can come back. There's a lot of stuff beyond comedy that you have to do to become successful, right?
Yeah, you have to dare to suck. Yeah, you have to dare to suck, and that's the thing, and it's a scary thing. And any stage you get up on, I remember when I first started off, the first time I ever stepped foot on the Comedy Store in the original room, I couldn't they have this one light, and you're like, holy fuck, this light is bright, and it blinds you, and the only thing that is between you and the light is air and the thoughts in your brain. And the thoughts in your brain, it's as if it's like a buffet and for everyone to see, and you get some people like they're just walking around those small little plates, with their plastic forks. And, yeah, that's good. Yeah, sure. Okay. You get somebody, some fat fuck in the back and be like, oh, that's amazing. He's loading up on everything. You're like, dude, we don't need all that. Just relax, you have to just dare to just, you can't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's, and you got to come back and you're going to fall on your face and you got to get right back up. And when you bomb, and you're driving in that car, it's kind of like when Steve Carell in the 40-Year-Old Virgin is riding his bike back from the poker game going, sandbags? Sandbags?
Well, it's like you brought up Malcolm Gladwell. You've got to do your 10,000 hours. Yeah.
So I just hung out at the Comedy Store like nonstop. And I would sit in the back and I would just take notes, and then I would go home and I would just scribble down and I would listen to comedy. It was just like, I was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with it, and I would learn other people's routines. Just, like, there's some people who you just can't help, and you're just like Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yeah.
You listen to him and you're like, has anybody ever been to Ross Dress for Less? This place, it looks like downtown Beirut, and you're, and just, there's another thing you can do. Like when you're feeling low,
yeah,
and and you talk about improvising, like start impersonating out somebody else.
Yeah.
And then come back to yourself and you'd be like, oh, okay. All right. So that's me. It's definitely that definitely helps. Doing impersonations definitely is a great way to get yourself out of your own head.
Well, speaking of that, what about acting? Who's an actor who has inspired you over the years, or maybe somebody that continually inspires you?
Willem Dafoe.
Oh man, love him.
Yeah.
Well, he was part of that experimental Wooster group.
Yeah, and all theater.
Theater.
Of course, Denzel Washington for his business acumen. He's always going back to the theater, and I do theater once a month at the Actors Night at the Broadwater Theater, 8 p.m., $15 to play or watch, with your host Justin Wade, host producer. Yeah, bring your 3-minute monologues or your 5-minute scenes. And
yeah, I've been there. That's really fun. I've been to 2 of them. Whether you're a professional actor that's done it a lot of times before or you've never done it, it's just such a great, safe space to practice and hone your talent.
Yes, 100% safe, 100% a safe place.
And I think that's mostly because of you, because you have such a kind and laughable spirit that you're daring them to suck. Because it doesn't really matter. Yeah. That has nothing to do with what it's about.
Yeah, it's just I dare you to just fuck it up.
Yeah,
make a mess. And it's so freeing. And when people hear that, they take out all the expectations and everything else that they thought that they were going to bring in, and they're not concerned with what everybody else is thinking. And everybody else just, they take a breath, and then I have them do this one exercise. I call it the dragon. And it looks something like La Haka, like New Zealand's All Blacks,
Yeah.
And people are like slapping their thighs and smacking their forearms, and they're sticking their tongue out, and they're making all these faces, and they look really ugly.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful at the same time. And as soon as they do that, they just laugh at each other, they laugh at themselves, and it's a good thing. But Willem Dafoe, Denzel Washington, just those guys constantly just going back and forth from the theater, because the theater is, that's the gym.
Well, there's got to be a big difference between being on stage, like a macro view, and then going to do film where everything's a lot more subtle and you have like a close up. I mean, they're 2 extremes, right?
Yes. So, and that's the muscle. That's the beautiful muscle of it all.
I did one show. I had my own show, Mr. Malcolm's Music Factory. And I think the most challenging thing for me is there was no microphones. So learning to project my voice so everybody in the back could hear it, and also equal all the professional performers I had with me. That was really tough to learn. You've probably done shows like that, right? Where there's no mics. Yeah. And that's the wonderful thing. You're working both stand-up comedy and theater. Even stand-up comedy, when you have the microphone, it's the volumes. There's so many variables, and how you want to project your voice, how you want to emphasize a point, by pulling the microphone closer to your mouth or away, or using it for any kind of sound effect. Or you learn quickly, what people are listening and what people can hear. And when you're in theater, you have to hit the back row. Otherwise, you lose the audience. Well, let me ask you, for your Actors Night, what you're making me think of is I once did the first level of Groundlings on a dare. And not only was it great for my confidence, but I realized a lot of things. Like the teacher was like, you do know that you never look people in the eyes when you're talking. And I was like, what? So first of all, I became a lot more self-aware. And then I would say about half my class were not actors. They were people from the corporate field, and they were trying to learn to emote and magnify, their communication skills. So would you suggest that people that are outside of the acting world come and try your actors night just to build a little more confidence in their everyday life?
100%. 199%. I have a friend who has done UCB and he is a businessman.
Right.
And it changes his perspective on life. It changes his approach when it comes to board meetings.
Probably posture, body language too, right?
Yeah, it's just because, with improv, you have to play certain types of characters. You play somebody, you're playing people from all different spectrums of the socioeconomic ladder.
Let's agree that no matter who you are in the world, you better be a good storyteller if you want to get your ideas across to someone else, whether you're a leader or a corporate person or anything that you do at all. I think it's imperative to learn those skills.
Yeah. And it all comes through, it comes through body posture.
Yeah.
It starts with the body. I was just actually talking about him the other night, but Stephen Book, who is, he's a pain in the ass, but he's a great teacher.
Yeah.
And when he talks about acting, it starts from the body.
Right.
Those little micro movements that people make, whether they're on stage or in the office setting, are picked up by the other person. And whether you walk in with no confidence or you walk in with a nobility, it shows.
Yeah.
And people pick up on that. And the great thing about going to improv, whether it be the Groundlings, UCB, Second City, back in the day, it was IO West. You would learn. It was like, as twere to hold a mirror up to nature, you would learn so much about yourself. Yeah. I would totally recommend for everybody, especially if you're in the business world, to get out there and play.
And God forbid, it's actually fun and people laugh when we're in a state of the world right now where it's pretty challenging to even look at the news.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really all comes from the body, and I remember like back in the 80s and 90s, everyone had to act a certain way and, everybody had to look like they went to Duke and played lacrosse, and they talk like, like every evil villain in 16 Candles. It's like, all right there, Kip, and they had to walk like a peacock, but that's not it. There's, you're just another guy in the chain.
A cog in the wheel, as they say.
Another cog in the wheel. That's what I was looking for.
Well, let's stay on this theme of acting. Now, since I've known you about 12 years, I've seen you do theater. I've seen you do music. I've seen you in commercials. I remember you had a brief appearance in Hot in Cleveland, right? With Betty White.
That was amazing.
But now I cannot tell you how proud and excited I am for you that you're on what is now one of my all-time favorite shows, The Pitt. Please share about that experience.
Just one of those things where it's like the right place at the right time. I auditioned for it 4 times.
Right.
Guess what happened was that I did the first audition. They liked it. They were like, let's try another one. They liked it. They gave me a third one, which is to actually be one of the series regulars, and didn't hear from them for a minute, but I really enjoyed, like, there's sometimes when you look at your auditions and you're trying not to look at them again because you're like, wow, I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
You try to put it behind you. And I didn't hear from them for that one, for the series regular. And then they gave me another one for this character named Joseph Marino. I just did the one audition and they're like, okay, we want Justin. Boom. And I was like, you really? I was like, okay. That's awesome. It was just such an amazing experience to be on that show. Joseph Marino is actually a real life person that used to be background on ER for like 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And Joseph, unfortunately, he passed away. He developed a sickness and he did pass away. Young cat, too. It was pretty tragic. But the thing was that Joseph was loved by everybody.
Yeah.
On the lot. And I was sitting there and we're ready to shoot. And one of the props guys comes up to me and he puts my hospital band on it and it reads Joseph Marino. And he's like, Joseph Marino is a real guy. And I was like, what? He was? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, maybe I said too much. I'm sorry. Bye. But then everyone would, oh, you're Joseph Marino? And I'm like, yeah. And people would just like throw in little bits like, he was such a great guy. He was so loving. It was so sad what happened to him, but this is really cool that you're playing him. So it actually turned out to be a huge honor.
I was going to say, yeah. Wow.
It turned out to be a huge honor. And it actually did something to my character. Like I had this guy, and of course, when you're acting stuff, you write a backstory, and he went on a trip and he came back and he developed a sickness. Again, not giving away too much. But when I heard and saw who he was, it changed everything. And it wasn't so much of a character. I was actually representing somebody that was a real person, and it actually affected how I felt about him.
And you could tap into that.
Yeah. And everyone there, all hats off to Noah Wyle.
Yeah.
This dude, my captain, this dude was the way that you run an emergency department. You have to run it with strength, humility, and a tremendous amount of patience.
Yeah.
And this guy is running an emergency department, but also running a show very much the same way. So we're running and gunning.
Yeah.
But it's like as if you're in the emergency department, because as soon as
you forget, for everybody out there, you forget you're watching a show. It's so intense. And
it was dynamite and then you're working with like guys and wonderful women, Amanda Marcellus, John Cameron, Damon Marcano. Damon Marcano, he's like the Clint Eastwood of directors. Beautiful black man with big old dreads and wears scrubs. Everybody on set wears scrubs in case you might get caught in the shot. You got grips and lighting and all these people that are all wearing scrubs.
Let me ask you this. I've read so many good things about Noah Wyle and what a great job he's doing and how he's honoring real emergency rooms and what it's like. But one of the things that I found fascinating is he talked about in an interview, he's trying to bring work back to Hollywood. He said it's very rare that this is a show where the actors, the production people, the set people, the people with the food, everyone is Hollywood at a time when it seems like a lot of shows are moving to like Vancouver and places like that.
It's a real shame. After the pandemic and after the strikes, and then we were on track to coming back, and then there was the fires, which was absolutely devastating. But here's the thing: before the fires, everyone from all parts of production, everyone's suffering right now. There's so much suffering, and it's really sad. And when we were on set on Warner Brothers lot, there's only two shows that were on. There's The Pitt and Abbott Elementary.
Yeah. Oh, no. Another great show.
Another great show. But the only other business that Warner Brothers was doing was they were doing tours where you had like these limousine like golf carts stacked with people inside, just taking pictures away, getting a tour of Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And they could see like the Gilmore Girls shot, space, and the Desperate Housewives from back in the day. But that, it's just like, it's sad. And I got to say, it's just like Governor Newsom was talking about, a $750 million incentive to bring business back. But that's been on the table for like a year, and it's not happening. And it's really sad. And because of that, and California being, the most expensive state in America, is there's no one's working. And then the fires came.
Yeah. Bro,
come on. It's so sad. And even Rob Lowe, who had a whole show ready to go, they told him that it was going to be filmed in New York, and he's like, nah, I'm good. I want to bring work back to California.
Yeah.
Like, this is where it should be. And the fact that Noah is doing it here.
Yeah.
Except for like a couple of like shots that they had to do in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Like, he's the only dude. Him, John Wiles are the only dudes that are, that are out there right now bringing work to California. And that was the beautiful thing.
It's a hopeful thing when all we see on the news is people are losing their jobs. It's so inspiring that he's doing this. Yeah.
And when I did the hosting for the Society of Camera Operators hurting.
Oh man, totally.
I met them. I met these cats, men and women. When I say cats, it was like a coffee and sandwich meetup, and it was over at in the Valley by one of the camera companies, Tuffin. They do Steadicam, and everyone was just huddled around each other, talking, consoling one another. But the look in everybody's eyes was just devastating because they're losing their homes, they're having to move out of their apartments, they're having to go back to parts of whatever other part of America to live in their parents'
And you know
basement.
what? I've heard this too. A good friend of mine, he was one of the main camera operators on the Star Wars TV shows, but he said they're pretty much shutting all Star Wars production down in Hollywood and moving over to Europe. And that's really sad because, as far as I understand it, if you're SAG, you can't work over there because they're BAFTA. And a lot of people are out of work, and they've put all the time in, and it's just disheartening.
Other than my theater show and the stand-up shows that I do, there's not, the auditions are few and far in between now.
Well, let's hope that people like Noah Wyle keep doing this and inspiring each other to bring the work back here.
Yeah, I mean, we need it. Everybody needs it. I mean, not to,
I mean, if you don't live here, one thing you don't realize about Hollywood is it's a real family town. One of my favorite things is like going to Target and seeing some of my students or whatever, or seeing some parents at a Starbucks or whatever.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I don't know. Like I do feel like it can come back. I feel like there is still a chance.
I think so too.
There's a chance. A lot of people are saying, let's get this party started. Let's bring it back. Because there's nothing like California.
No.
When it comes to filming.
And that's why all of us are here, despite all the insanity of living in LA, especially. Yeah. You're only here if you love it. Anytime I travel and I come back, I just love to go to Ralph's and see people from all over the world. There's something cool about that.
Yep. Rock and roll Ralph's in Sunset.
I'm going to read some quotes, and I would like you to respond to them. Are you ready, Dr. Awesome. Justin Wade?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yeah. Performer. Justin Wade, Canadian performer. You can catch him anytime you want, because right now he's unemployed. Knock on his door. Sit next to him on his couch while he's watching White Lotus.
Great show. Your hero, Richard Pryor, once said this. You work your butt off, and somebody says you can't have your record played because it offends them. Tyrants are made of such stuff.
Yeah. Shit, man. Fuck them motherfuckers.
That's a great response. What was his TV show? Robin Williams was one of the guest stars. How does it go? Like, he wanted the beginning of the show to appear naked, right?
Yeah. It was on NBC, right? It was NBC.
And this is what, late 70s, early 80s, not the most typical thing that wouldn't shock anybody now, but.
No. It's funny, though, because they only had his show on for, I think, like 2 seasons, 2 years, which was very similar to Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. Pryor's show was great, though. A lot of it's on YouTube. I've seen most of it.
Oh, man, it's dynamite. I mean, you got all kinds of people. A lot of people from the Comedy Store were there, too.
Yeah.
Like Argus Hamilton was there. And Argus Hamilton is still going strong. He starts the evening night at the Comedy Store almost, especially on the weekends, Fridays and Saturdays. He comes up there with his newspaper, and he's cracking them, dude. And he looks great. And he's still wearing the white suit, talking about, the good old times and, loose women and cocaine and, and politics.
He's like a lifer. Yeah.
Yeah. He's great. I mean, we're talking about somebody that actually made it, not, making it isn't necessarily like getting on TV. It's actually living to the point where you can, collect your retirement.
Few and far between.
Especially in this business.
A hero of mine and yours, David Bowie, once said, I have found myself deeply, deeply intrigued by the ska punk scene. It's such an expressive form of popular music. It's so real. It's got so much life. It's the most vital music in the world. Yeah.
This is coming from the man who calls himself an alligator. My mama, papa, rocking for you. He's a space invader. He is a space invader. And he's a sweet monkey bitch as well. So, I mean, if anybody's going to accept any kind of music, it's definitely him. I mean, how many talk about like caterpillar to butterfly. This guy's had so many transitions. He's one of my all-time musical heroes. If I could be a single artist, I would be David Bowie. If I could be a garage band, I would be The Clash. Yeah, if I could be an all like a stadium rock band, I would be Led Zeppelin.
I can also see you pulling off, remember when Outkast first came out and they had all the plaid and stuff, which actually, now that we've been discussing that, probably inspired by the ska scene.
Spodioti dopalicious.
Speaking of Noah Wyle, he once said, with any project, but especially in television, I always try to look at where the character is starting from, where he's going to end up, and try to find the biggest arc that makes it the most exciting to play.
Well, what's great about the Pitt is that you're getting so many arcs. It's one arc after the next.
Yes.
And what's amazing about the Pitt is that it leads a lot up. The narration, the writing is actually, a lot of it is left up to the audience. So there's, for instance, a grandmother who brings in a child that's drowned. Now, without going further, you wonder, like, you have an idea, and this is how brilliant the show is. You have an idea, you generate through your imagination the scenario of the pool.
Right.
And also you also generate what happens after to the grandmother.
Right.
But you don't see, they don't tell you what happens. You have an idea, or you wonder what happens. Like, so many people are like, is your character coming back? Because it just, like, we don't know what happened to your character afterwards. But it's like, that is the intriguing thing about it, is that it leads you up to your imagination in such a wonderful way that it's addictive.
I think the best kind of art or music or whatever asks more questions than gives answers. And a good example would be Alfred Hitchcock's original Psycho during the shower scene. You see the knife, you see the blood going down the drain, but you never see the woman stabbed. Right.
Yes. And that's exactly it. You know, and that's the imagination. And that's what made it so horrifying, because you're just like, oh, God.
You're right. Actually, I think it was Stephen King that once said that, a viewer's imagination is much scarier than whatever I could put on the film.
Yeah. And you're just getting these arcs. It's like one arc after the next.
Oh, the Pit is insane. There's always like 8 to 10 different stories going on, and you're trying to follow the characters, and they're all so unique and interesting, but it's like one thing to another. And I imagine that was the intent. If you're Noah's character, you're just Robbie, you're trying to go around and help everybody, but it's like you put one fire out and another one starting.
I worked in the emergency department. When I first came to California, I was an assistant to a physical therapist. I was a flexibility technician. I was also a personal trainer. And I thought, I'm probably going to definitely go into this line of work. I'm actually studying for the National Academy of Sports Medicine as we speak.
Wow.
So it's still, the thing intrigues me. Like, I used to like smoke weed and read Grey's Anatomy just for fun. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
You probably had the coloring book too. My wife has it. And
I do have the coloring book as well. Sometimes I would post it online and be like, this is what I just drew. It's like, the longest muscle in the body is the sartorius, and that's me, Dr. Sartorius.
Distant relative of Dr. Sayers.
Yeah. So it's just, I worked in the emergency department, and I've seen all kinds of things. I've wheeled so many people down, so many women down to up to the 3rd floor at Cedars-Sinai, pre and post natal for, to deliver babies. And none of them were mine. Can you believe it?
As far as you know.
But I've seen everything from motorcycle accidents, suicide attempts, car accidents, sickness, and jaundice. Like I've seen it all. And then to see what happened here, and I talked to Noah about this as well, and he's like, wow. And I was like, yeah, dude, the fact that I'm even here, this is amazing. Like, this is cool, man.
Yeah.
Like, and it's real.
I'm going to admit there are a couple of scenes I take my glasses off because I can't see anything. I'm asking Christine, okay, what's happening now?
Yeah, I'm exhausted, okay? I'm like every black person in America in the Magic Johnson Theater, okay? I'm like, oh, hell no. No.
It's like the Eddie Murphy bit from his stand-up when he'd be like, get out.
Yeah, that's me in my head. Like, I'm screaming. Yeah, I'm like, so... But that's the thing. It's just like, you are becoming a doctor as well. Like, you're learning these things, because the wonderful balance about being in the emergency department and as you're like a full doctor, and then you're the rookie doctor, you're the student doctor.
Yeah.
So what's happening is that these guys are learning not only what they just learned in school, but now they have to apply it in practice. And the one thing is, Dr. Rabinovich will say, all right, what are we doing here? What needs to be done? And the students will be like, we got to do this, that, and that. And as someone who is not a doctor or a nurse, you're taking this all in and you're like, oh, and that's the right answer. No, that's the wrong answer. But what if we do this? And you're like, and then you start watching it enough, you kind of pick up on the lingo and you get an idea of it.
Yeah.
It's not all Latin.
Right.
You dig?
Just got to immerse yourself into it.
You immerse yourself into it, and you get there's a bit of an education. It's a little bit of like a Grey's Anatomy.
It's like learning Klingon, right?
It's like learning Klingon. Yes. Yeah. Except that learning Klingon hasn't really served a purpose except for dating. It's only through dating where Klingon has served a purpose. I don't know. Maybe that's how you met your wife. I have no idea. I don't know what you're trying to tell me, Dr. Malcolm. But
well, listen up.
With a rippled forehead and fucking talking to each other and spit flying out of your mouth. And talking with your mouths open an inch apart. Yeah, maybe that's great for some sort of Klingon Tinder.
All right, Dr. Justin Wade, before we go, I'd like to help you promote all the different things that you're doing. So Actors Night, one more time.
Yeah, Actors Night is at the Broadwater Theater. It's actually one block west of Vine on Santa Monica and Lillian Way, 6320 Lillian Way.
And that's a fun place, too. If you haven't been there, they have a great bar right on the corner called The Plunge.
Yep.
So if I want to sign up and do a 3-minute monologue, what do I do? Do I reach you through Instagram or? Yeah,
you can go to Actors Night on Instagram, or you can go to Justin Wingsway on Instagram as well. Our next show is May 11th.
Okay.
We have a few spots open. This is our 4-year anniversary.
Wow. That's hard to believe. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. 4-year anniversary. You were there for the 3-year anniversary where we had a live band and we had the great Maya Sykes singing.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah.
What was the name of that band?
Oh, Everything Hurts, the band I play with.
Yeah, Everything Hurts.
Yeah, John Manfrolotti is the leader. Is IMDb the best place to go to see your work that you've done over the years?
Yeah. Yeah, you can see my work on IMDb, Justin Wade, but you can see all the work that I've done. I've done, stuff on Dave and on Hulu and Netflix's Dirty John. I just did a show called The Countdown, Eric Dane and Jensen Ackles.
Do I remember correctly? You got to work with Snoop Dogg?
Yeah, working with Snoop Dogg was the same as like working with Betty White. Everybody is... It's because it's just like there's certain people that just walk on set and they just change the atmosphere just by their simple presence.
Yeah.
He had like what my mother had. He walks on and everyone's like, oh, okay. When I worked with Betty White on Hot in Cleveland, everybody was pretty curmudgeon-y, that day, and everyone was just like, we got to work. And then Betty White walks on set, and it was as if there was like flowers and unicorns and bunnies, in Technicolor following her. It was like a wave of, it was like something like out of a Prince video, like it's, raspberry beret, just like foliage, and it looked like something from Adam and Eve. It was just like, everyone was just like, okay, we get it now. This is why we're doing it.
And same thing with Snoop, right?
Snoop came in, except that with him, he came in with a cloud of smoke. And everyone was just like, am I high? Is this second hand smoke affecting me?
Yeah.
We did a show. It's for something. This is Snoop Dogg. It was like for home security. Like, yeah, bow, wow, wow, yippee, yo, yippee, yay, Bill Buddy's getting into this motherfucking house. So we did that, and we literally worked for like 15 minutes. We both nailed it. I've been waiting there for 8 hours for him to get out of his car. You think he came out of like he came from heaven. There was so much smoke, and he was great, and he was super nice and generous. And he's, I don't know about him performing for Donald Trump's inauguration party, but I
don't have anything positive to say about that.
I have nothing. That's as far as I'm going to go with that. It's once someone said, Snoop, we'll play you at the cookout, but you're not invited.
Dr. Justin Wade, thank you for coming on the show today.
You're the best, Dr. Malcolm Moore. You are seriously the best. And honestly, you are actually one of my heroes as well. No jive talk.
Thank you, Doctor.
What you do and how you persevere. And, there's two people in the world that I have the most respect for. Those are nurses and teachers. Yeah. And what you do and the light that you shine in so many people's lives, it was just one of the things that attracted me to you. Like I was a moth to your light, brother. Thank you, Doctor, for this opportunity. Thank you for being my friend. You know how much I love you. And
likewise.
I hope this sees millions of people and that you get Mark Maron on here too one day.
Oh, man. Want to hear my top 3 people I would like to interview? Mark Maron, Fred Armisen, and Jim Carrey.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's great. That's a great lineup.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Okay. All right. Stay black.
See you, Doctor.